It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I will be your host this morning. Boy, I'll tell you what. You know, some days the news is slow, and then some days it ain't. This is one of those it ain't days. You know, the level of I don't know what else to call it other than I guess you can label it under corruption. I guess you can label it under overreach. But the amount of malfeasance that is going on within every aspect of our lives today, and I'm not just talking about, you know, in these agencies and in the federal government. I'm talking about on a global scale, folks. The governments that are controlling the world are in a state of malfeasance that is so desperate at this point to retain power that you can feel literally by the moment the steel fist of tyranny being squeezed. I mean, it's incredible to me how much of it is actually going on and how everyone is just complacently sitting there willing to accept it. What's happening in the Veterans Administration is going to be one of our topics this morning. I mean, this is another scandal that's imploding with scores of deaths. Scores. Individuals who were played with, their lives played with, so that some bureaucrat could make their books look good. I mean, folks, how unconscionable can you get? We're not talking here about, you know, it's bad enough when people are stealing money. You got every agency out there, they're all spending, you know, money on these corporate, on these government credit cards that nobody holds them accountable for. That's bad. You've got Benghazi out there where people are actually have died as a result, and a cover-up of enormous scope. But now you've got an internal organization in the Veterans Administration. And I don't want to demonize the entire VA, but I got to tell you, I'm going to again draw the same argument that I've given you before on law enforcement, on religious extremism. If you are not willing to police yourselves, if you are not willing to expose the wrongdoing within your own ranks because you're afraid to blow the whistle, because you're afraid of your own role and position, because you're afraid to give up your job, then we have nothing further to really say to you. And we will remove you from your positions. And I don't want, you know, resignings. I don't want these people to mea culpa on a microphone. I want them in prison. I want perp walks. I want to see a guy who's being led out in handcuffs with a hoodie over his head or holding a newspaper in front of his face. That's what we need. Not once, not a dozen times, not even 100 times. We need to see this day in and day out. American citizens who trusted their government, and frankly, let's be honest, they're not given an opportunity to have other health care. I mean, they can go out there and buy health care on the open market in violation of the promise that they were given by our government to take care of their medical needs. But how unconscionable can you get? These are people that put their lives on the line for the nation. I don't care whether you agree or disagree with what they did while they worked for the government, but these are people that, with good intent, with loyalty and patriotism in their hearts, even if it was misdirected, even if it was misled, did the right thing by us, by our nation, did what they were expected to do, did what they were asked to do. And now we're allowing them to wither and die while they wait to get on an appointment list just to see a doctor. How criminal is that? So, before we go too much further, let's make sure that we're applauding the whistleblowers within the VA who are coming forward. Let's ask ourselves, and let's ask the rest of the country, how many more of you out there are whistleblowers that could expose what's going on in your own agency, your employer? How many of you are there in various agencies, various departments, bureaucratic organizations that could expose what's happening right now in our country? I want to see how many can step forward and say, I'm not going to go to Congress because it's going to get whitewashed. I'm not going to go and attempt to contact my superior because my superior is, for all intents and purposes, in on it. I want to see how many of you are going to be willing to step forward and say, I've had enough. And I'm going to do the right thing by my nation again. I'm going to stand up and expose the truth. Our second topic this morning will be Gowdy. Trey Gowdy has been slated and named. It's official now that he's going to be the head of the Benghazi probe. But I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to withhold my opinion on that until we see exactly how much authority and power this agent or this committee is going to have. And I'm going to say it again for the record. They're expected to have subpoena power. But if they cannot make direct charges and position those people to be charged by the court, and they have to go through the Department of Justice to charge anyone criminally, then the committee is a failed endeavor before it begins. Our third topic, climate change, agencies, and executive action should be sounding a klaxon for America. Net neutrality is being injected again by the FCC. Twice it's been rejected by the courts. Twice. But that's not enough. That won't stop this tyrant and his minions and the agencies that are under him. He's determined to destroy every facet of every piece of every diamond that he can find and gain access to through the executive actions, and deploying extra-constitutional administrative agencies as the equivalent of homicide bombers. He's lighting them up and setting them off in a crowd. That's essentially what's happening, ladies and gentlemen. Look, listen to the names of these agencies and tell me that's not what's happening. Tell me these agencies aren't being used as weapons of mass destruction. IRS, Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, the FCC, the one responsible for net neutrality for the third time, the USDA, Bureau of Land Management, Department of the Interior, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, the State Department. The State Department is what's holding up this entire XL pipeline. For what? Even the State Department came out and said originally, we don't have a problem with it. Now they're coming back out and saying, but we do have a problem with it only because Obama has a problem with it. And why is the State Department involved at all? Because it crosses the border between Canada and the United States. How insane. The NSA, the CIA, the National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO, NASA, the FDA, the SEC, the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the Federal Elections, FEC, the DOE, Department of Energy, FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, the National Labor Relations Board, National Transportation Safety Board, the NRC, the NSF, National Science Foundation, SBA, Small Business Administration, the SSA, the Social Security Administration, the ITC, the International Trade Commission. There are hundreds of these agencies out there. All of them are directly working against the United States. They are being swung about like double-edged, sharp, razor-sharp swords in a crowded room. Indiscriminate slaughter. They seek to do as much damage as possible. The goal is to create chaos, to overwhelm the system, and it is textbook Cloward and Piven strategy. I got to tell you, this climate change stuff and the executive actions that are coming out as a result of it, this report that's going to come out, 900-page or 800 and some odd page report of the dire warnings of climate change, it's all based on fraud science, commissioned science. No different than as if you commissioned a piece of art. I want you to paint a picture of my wife, the manor, the lord of the lord or the lady of the manor. It's made up. The artist has the opportunity to wipe away the wrinkles, to give her bluer eyes than God did, to make her hair look perfectly coiffed, to make her slimmer, more attractive, raise her cheekbones. That's essentially what we have in climate change science. Commissioned science. The writers, they're artists, crafting and manufacturing something with virtually, there's no real peer review. The peer review process in the entire scientific community is disgustingly corrupted in this nation. Our fourth topic, the utter failure of the judiciary when we need it most. There's a lot of people out there that are celebrating the Supreme Court case yesterday about how you can pray at a city council meeting. You see, this is like the respite or the eye of the storm. Every once in a while, you're given a little relief so that you don't completely storm the court with torches and pitchforks. Meanwhile, they turned down an opportunity to hear a major Second Amendment case in New Jersey that is arbitrary and capricious, and has rules that the state has rules that prohibit you from gaining a right to carry. The rules in New Jersey are so archaic, so arbitrary, so capricious, so unconstitutional, so inflammatory, so illegal. I mean, they say it's a will carry or a shall carry, right? But you cannot get that permit. Nobody gets it unless you're a political friend or a crony. Jefferson told us, "You seem to consider judges as the ultimate arbiters of all constitutional questions." And this is a very dangerous doctrine indeed, and one which would place us under the despotism of an oligarchy of judges. And the Constitution has erected no such single tribunal. Judges don't make it right. Want proof? At one point, slavery was legal in this country. So was prohibition. So was barring the women the right to vote. Other nations, we've seen where they've made it legal for them to steal and take private property, imprison individuals, murder, ethnic cleansing. legal, approved by the courts. How much more proof do you need? In Phoenix, the VA scandal is just beginning to be exposed. The layers are being peeled back. New charges and a second whistleblower has come out. I watched a guy last night. I tried to find this video somewhere for you. I couldn't find it. I watched a guy last night. I think he was on Megyn Kelly, but I can't be sure. And this guy is a whistleblower who says not only should you ignore these people who say these lists didn't exist, I added names to them personally, and I can vouch for their authenticity. He's willing to testify. These 40 U.S. vets, 27 verifiable, 40 estimated, have died at the Phoenix VA alone, waiting for appointments, being hidden in a compiled list so that someone looked good on a report card. Understand the implications of that. So what you're saying to me is that you were so concerned about your career and your job that you were willing to allow Americans to die so that you had a good report card. And to make matters worse, when they were ordered twice not to destroy any records, they went in, even though they had been told not to, and began to destroy the lists. One enterprising woman, who's a longtime physician, came forward with more incendiary charges and the accusation that they've been shredding documents to hide the truth. Well, last night, this other woman came by and exposed the fact that there have been other individuals who understood that in the system there was another way to compile a list of who would actually come in and try to schedule an appointment. There was another scheduling system somehow or there was another scheduling application somewhere in the system. And they've downloaded that and given that to the independent or allegedly independent IG, Inspector General. I got to tell you, if this doesn't result in criminal charges of conspiracy to commit murder or negligent homicide, I don't know what will. This is second-degree murder. Knowing that you are putting people on the back end of a list for up to 12, 13 months at a time who are dying. Well, the argument will be from those who want to defend their actions. Well, wait a minute. We didn't know he was dying. We just thought he had a respiratory problem. But he died of respiratory failure 13 months after he came in and asked for the appointment. Well, we didn't know he was going to die. No, of course not. The bank robber didn't know that the guard was going to die that morning when he walked through the door. But he's held accountable for his murder. It doesn't matter that the guard didn't die of a gunshot. It doesn't matter if the guard died of a heart attack out of fear. What does matter is that that death was prompted by the person entering the bank with the intention to do destruction. And I have to tell you, these people in the VA are guilty of no less. 1,400 to 1,600 sick veterans were forced to wait months just to see a doctor. Meanwhile, you've got this administration out here screaming bloody murder about the Obamacare and how wonderful that's going to be to cover 35 million people. And then it turns out that at the end of the day, 10 years from now, we're still going to have the same, a different 35 million uncovered. What was the point? Meanwhile, you've got veterans sitting here in the thousands who can't get coverage. And this isn't something that just cropped up yesterday. This has been going on in the VA for decades. It's always been a hellhole. The cover-ups that are going on in this administration and in government in general, and I got to tell you, it all comes from the top. You know, when I used to work for a large corporation, and I've worked for a couple of them, I could always see a pattern. When the economy was good, when sales were high, and these are companies that were doing billions of dollars worth of business, there were no rules. Anybody could spend anything they wanted. They could take the most lavish trips. They could spend the most money on the most egregious, ridiculous nonsense. I mean, I remember, you know, being for my performance there, being sent on a vacation that cost, I don't know, $40,000 multiple times. Every year I was with Verizon, I was given the President's Cabinet Award for performance. 6 out of 6 years. I mean, those were vacations at Switzerland twice. I mean, you know, these weren't, you know, hey, here's a ticket to the Bahamas and a third-rate hotel. These were 5-star all the way. But when the economy began to slow down, those kinds of spendings stopped. They reined themselves in. The flow of money stopped. The egregious spending stopped. In this case, what you have is there is no profit marker, if you will, for government. So the spending never stops. In fact, it only grows. No matter how bad the rest of the country operates, no matter how bad the rest of the economy is, the government always gets more money. And therefore, the most profligate abuses are occurring everywhere around us. And the disease of these people is like the progressivism of a disease of an addict. They don't get better, they only get worse. They get deeper and deeper and deeper into the disease. The disease of abuse, of spending, of self-interest, of all of these things. It's so obvious. All you got to do is look. And Helen Keller couldn't deny the truth. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this Trey Gowdy to head the Benghazi probe. The question is, will it have any authority? If it does not have the ability, and I'm already hearing rumors that it won't, if it doesn't have the ability and the authority to directly charge criminally individuals, then I got to tell you, folks, it's nothing more than another probe by another committee. Because if they have to go through the Department of Justice and Eric Holder to charge anyone, this is a waste of time. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Please communicate with me directly. You can contact me by email. You can send me email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. We're going to tackle this Benghazi probe issue in just a moment. Stick with us. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.